Welcome to the WAN Manager podcast. I'm your host, Bryan, and this is the show where we talk to networking experts about the data services that make business possible. So one of the earliest and most persistent use cases for SD-WAN has been the ability to utilize alternative connectivity options like internet, fixed wireless. We've seen in our WAN Manager Survey data since 2018 that we've been running that survey, MPLS has been losing ground to other wireline alternatives like DIA and broadband. Over that same time period, wireless has grown a little bit, but it's still relatively small. We see just under 1 in 10 offices on average have a wireless connection of some kind. Now, I personally really expect to see that increase significantly over the next few years, particularly as we see fixed wireless 5G plans emerge on the market. But I have today with me an expert on all things wireless for the enterprise, who's going to take us through that transition and how we might see that emerge. So very happy to have on the show Ivan Landen, who is the founder and CEO of Blue Wireless. Welcome, Ivan.
Thank you. Welcome. Great to be here.
Excellent. So as I almost always do on the show, I wonder if you could start off with just a brief background on yourself and then how you came to found Blue Wireless.
Sure can, yes. So myself, yes, Ivan or Ivan. I'm originally Dutch, but the last 20, almost 30 plus years I've spent in Asia, mostly in Singapore, and been in telco all my life. And after always working in local access for most of my professional career. In 2015, we thought, hey, now is the time to try to do this better. And with the emergence of 4G back then, we said, hey, this is the time to start a new concept to really make fixed wireless or wireless access something that is reliable and consistent and something that enterprises can use. So that was really the start of Blue Wireless, and it seems like a lifetime ago. It's 7 years ago, where we in that meantime, built up the company globally. Currently in the Netherlands, actually, but we have offices in Australia, in the US, in Malaysia, and what we do is help customers with fixed wireless connectivity. And that's still, as you said, a relatively new concept, but it's accelerating the adoption. Yeah.
So if you started this 7 years ago, that was really for the idea of an LTE market. 5G was maybe a nascent idea at some engineering kind of consortiums back then, but certainly not a thing, right? So, yeah.
No, it was still the 3G area, and I think in the beginning, people were like, "Well, that's for mobile phones, and how does that work?" And dropped calls, that was kind of the perception.
Right. Which,
a lot has changed in that in those last 7 years.
Absolutely, and I promise from now on I'll call you Ivan, not Ivan. Sorry.
Both is fine, actually.
Yeah. So yeah, I have two first names, so I'm used to just sort of answering to anything that anyone comes up with.
Same here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. So as I kind of alluded to in our WAN Manager Survey results at the top of the show, there, historically many of the enterprises that we talk to, wireless is a kind of background technology. It's there maybe as a connectivity option of last resort, maybe as a secondary or tertiary kind of line when wireless or when wireline, was just too expensive or difficult. Do you think enterprises should start to rethink that positioning of wireless now as maybe a connectivity of first resort or a primary connection?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot has changed in that time. I mean, one is the technology, of course, right? There's a huge difference between 3, 4, and 5G. But apart from the technology, I think it's the development of SD-WAN, right? Where the connectivity is one, and you need to optimize your connectivity options. So initially most of the demand was definitely for backup, last resort. But if we look at the deployment now, I would say probably half of our connections that we deploy are for primary use, and that is. It's a large spectrum of customers. On one side, you have the customers that want flexibility, right? They're in good locations. They could order a fixed line, but they don't want to.
Hmm.
because they're in retail. They have pop-up, they have, ever-changing requirements, and this is basically just bring your own internet, right?
Right.
And on the other side of the scale, we have customers in mining, in energy, in difficult locations where it is just too difficult to get fixed lines, too expensive. They're on satellite, and hey, LTE is here, and is
Hmm.
actually much faster and cheaper and more reliable than the alternatives. So
Hmm.
yeah, today we do wind farms, solar farms, fish farms, you name it.
Hmm.
And that's their lifeline. That's their connection to the outside world, and they run their business on it.
Right, absolutely. There was one case that I can think of. A large retailer, a global retailer that has a lot of obviously sort of outlets in shopping malls and whatnot, where you tend to have broadband under contract with the building developer, the owner,
Yep.
and you don't have the opportunity to get any other broadband alternatives, and so you're stuck with like a sort of monopolistic provider unless you can employ wireless. And so after they adopted SD-WAN, they went with a wireless first because they really didn't like their broadband options, which I think this was several years ago now, and is something that I think we can probably expect to see happening more often. Is that similar to what you're seeing?
Absolutely, and we've, I mean, especially in Asia, I've been, selling internet access in countries like Indonesia and all kinds of places where basically
Mm,
building management were holding,
exactly.
tenants hostage, right? And you need to pay $2,000 a month for some riser access or something silly. But also on the other side, I mean, we have airports and other locations where there is Wi-Fi. It's like, hey, well, there's some corporate Wi-Fi, but it's just not suitable for WAN connectivity
Hmm.
because yeah, it looks cheap, like hey, there's some free Wi-Fi here, but you cannot run your business on that. So
Right.
again,
Right.
this whole notion that yeah, customers want flexibility, they want to be able to look to use the access options that are available, and LTE is definitely one of the contenders now. And
Hmm.
yeah, in
Hmm.
terms of speed, in terms of reliability, I mean, the way we position it to customers is that it's a broadband service, definitely better than cable or copper broadband,
Hmm.
but not to the level of fiber broadband, right? So
Right.
that's kind of
Right.
where it kind of fits in the spectrum at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe always been a little bit of a no-brainer when you have the kinds of things you mentioned, windmills or fish farms or that sort of thing, where digging a trench would be, maybe several $100,000 US, whereas putting up what's your kind of price comparison? When does that balance tip in terms of putting up a fixed wireless antenna, having a
Hmm.
mobile tower nearby? What kind of deltas have you seen kind of between
Oh, I
the
mean,
digging a trench and procuring wireless?
oh, it's mostly those conversions we see from satellite, where customers used to
Mm,
be on a
hmm.
five
Hmm.
thousand dollar a month link, and they now go to a $500 a month link, but they
Right.
go from 512K to 50 meg.
Right.
So it's a
Right.
double
That's the
double,
key
right?
there.
You spend
Hmm.
10 times less and you get 10 times more. So yeah, it's a no brainer for a lot of these customers to say, yeah, we need to update.
Hmm. And just in terms of process, how Blue Wireless works, I think
Hmm.
it maybe get a little bit deeper dive of that. A lot of folks listening to the show, if not almost all of them, right, are going to be familiar with kind of the Experio aggregator model.
Yep.
Is it very similar to that in terms of they're not you are procuring loops for them, managing the loops for them, and I guess they're not loops anymore, but yeah. So is
Yeah.
that essentially how it works?
Absolutely. So what we do, we try to deliver a consistent service, and now is available in 80 countries. So whether you're in
Hmm.
Asia, you're in Europe, or in the Americas, we can deliver wireless access in all these countries. And similar like internet aggregators, we use local mobile operator networks, of course,
Right.
to establish that, right?
Hmm.
So what it means is that if you're in Australia, yeah, we have three networks available for you. Telstra, Optus, Voda. If you're in the US, we have others. In each country, we have at least two and often three or four options.
Hmm.
So what we do as part of the provisioning process is that we actually optimize the deployment. So we look first, hey, where are you located? What are the towers there? We got some tools that allow us to basically upfront already tell you what's the speed, what's the performance you can expect. And then once we deliver it, through our installation process, we make sure that we have a guaranteed speed for that particular location. And that's a very important element. What we've seen for customers is that reliability is key for enterprise customers.
Right.
And although there's all these crazy technologies out there, like, we do 1 gig, 3 gig on 5G. I mean, that's great for for consumers. But I think most businesses are still in the, especially branch connectivity is still in the 10 to 100 meg range,
Right.
and
Right, for sure.
reliability is key. So, and I think this is also one thing that we've seen as we kind of move out of the mobile, space where this kind of comes from, and where wireless access is not. It's not about the SIM card. It is about making sure that the whole service works, that it's properly aligned, properly installed, and gives that same performance as a fixed line does.
Right. That's the key. Yeah, and sort of taking away that pain. I mean, something I've talked about often in the broadband kind of ISP world is folks have adopted SD-WAN and moved to a more internet centered WAN strategy. Suddenly, you might need to have folks who speak a bunch of different languages. Much like in the ISP world, especially actually in the mobile world, because of licensing being managed by national governments. You really have to go. There are very few providers like Vodafone that even operate in multiple countries. Is that part of your experience as well?
Yeah, so I mean, if you put it in kind of the evolution, right? I mean, the mobile, I mean, everybody's familiar with that, right? SIM cards, you put them in your phone. Of course, in the
Right.
last 10 years, we had a lot in the M2M, right? IoT. So
Right.
it's a SIM card that you can use everywhere. That's great if you just need a sensor or whatever, right? Something that is small, something that's flexible. And yeah, the likes of the global carriers like Voda and others have those services. But wireless access it's not about a SIM card that is roaming constantly. It's about a
Right.
local connection that is optimized for that local branch. So obviously, if you're in Australia, I mean, to use the same example again, you want to have a local Telstra connection, right? It has a
Right.
local Telstra IP address, works out locally, same as your local loop would do. You would not be wanted to use a American SIM card that needs to travel around the world to break out, in the US. So sorry, it's a
Yeah,
bit technical,
exactly.
but I think this is the example
No.
where,
Yeah.
and so I think what we usually, we try to explain to customers, look, this is not mobile, this is not IoT M2M, this is wireless access, which is something different than, what most customers are used to so far.
Yeah, I think that's the key distinction to make. Certainly, is I mean, it is still the case when we talk to a lot of enterprises, and you talk about mobile to them, it means handsets and tablets and things like that, or IoT and again, this being that sort of a connectivity option of last resort, and that's kind of a mindset that needs to change when there are these kind of alternatives available, especially when it's also the case that most enterprises I talk to depending on the vertical and whatnot, once they've deployed SD-WAN, are really interested in having maybe 2, 3, even 4 connections at a lot of sites, and so you run out of diverse options if you're sticking to wireline only, even at that, right? Is that something that customers have come to you with?
Yes. So, I mean, the beauty of wireless, I mean, it's, LTE 5G is that there's already the built-in resilience, right? And I think, customers are really impressed about the availability numbers that we're able to deliver because it's a managed service. It means there's a portal. We can see how every site is up, and there's lots of sites who are up 100% every year. Because even think about it, how often is your phone down, right?
Right.
It's not
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
don't move it.
Yeah, well,
So
it's funny you say that because when we talked to WAN managers at the onset of the global pandemic,
yeah,
that was a comment that a lot of them had, that they some of them actually gave out instructions to their workers who were working from home for the first time
yep,
of how to set up a hotspot on their phone if their wireline was down, especially some local, ISPs hadn't engineered for everyone being home with their kids
Yep.
home and all that. So they had to just inform people how you could actually use your mobile as a kind of pseudo fixed wireless, right? So
Yeah, it's the first it's the first step, right? It's the first level.
hmm
That's what most of
yeah,
us, started doing already a few years ago. And
yeah,
most people nowadays, even they switch to their mobile, to 4G, 5G, rather than Wi-Fi because it's faster.
right, right,
So
absolutely.
yeah, there's a lot of resilience already built into the LTE networks. That is great, and on top of that, what we do in our deployments as Blue Wireless is that we put every device out there with dual SIM. So
hmm
even if your primary tower would go down next door, there's always a secondary SIM, a secondary network that you can access.
hmm
So it has a lot of built-in redundancy as the service itself, and is definitely redundant from any wired connections that customers might have at the location.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought too. There, so with a wireline connection, there's a bunch of things that somebody can back into a telephone pole, someone can dig a trench, but also the facility that terminates at can go down. Whereas it's a little bit more resilient in the wireless market. If you have a tower go down, you can redirect yourself to another tower, I suppose.
It goes automatically actually, so
Yeah.
there's already a lot of built-in. So yeah, a lot of customers, yeah, it switches over in case it would be something. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, now, Ivan, I this is something I didn't sort of indicate ahead of time that I would ask you about. So feel free to to not want to speak on this. But are you watching the LEO, low Earth orbit kind of market develop? Do you see anything interesting from an aggregator kind of standpoint? There is that you mentioned that as folks switch to a wireless option, it's sometimes away from a satellite option. Those have historically been very low bandwidths and very expensive. There are a couple of billionaires out there trying to change that. A lot of people are skeptical about, the long term sort of efficacy of that. But
Hmm.
is that something that you would sort of follow, track, think that is interesting for the enterprise market in the long run?
Absolutely, it's interesting, and
hmm
I mean, LTE is improving constantly with 5G, but also satellite is improving, right?
hmm
And that's a great development, I think, for enterprise customers. You need more choice, you need more options,
Right.
and even for us, we don't say that wireless is the solution for everything, but having
hmm
that ability to kind of mix and match and say, hey, I'm here. What are my options? That I think is a very important one. So yeah, I'm pretty bullish on all the new stuff that's coming as well. Whether it's Elon Musk or whoever, doesn't matter.
hmm Yeah.
We still need more connectivity. it's
Yeah.
uh, it's not ending. Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly with sort of the bringing the cost down for the deployment, right, was the key there, but also that they're have new technologies in terms of having much greater throughputs, from what I understand from your sort of satellites of old. So it's definitely something I want to stay on top of, because I think that could be a game changer as enterprises increasingly go to kind of internet first for their WAN as well.
Yep.
So even you guys have been doing this for 7 years, so I'm sure you have a lot of interesting examples. You don't have to name names or anything if you're not free to. But I wonder if you could take us through maybe a case study or two of someone who came to you with some connectivity issues, and what you came up with as a solution.
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of our kind of first, I mean, we started out in Asia, right? And
hmm
retail in Asia is a big thing.
Right. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
They're well known for their malls and beautiful shopping centers. So one of our first large customers that we deployed across Asia is Coach, which is the handbag,
hmm
the
hmm
US brand. And yeah, we deployed almost 400 connections across what is like 12 countries.
Oh wow.
Um, and well, I think there's probably about 500 by now installed. But I think the challenge and the reason why they like the approach that we have is that whether you're in Japan or in Malaysia, it was the same approach. It's the same device. Of course, it uses a different 4G network, but
Right.
we have that consistency, and I think that is one thing that a lot of customers like. Say, hey, it doesn't matter where I want things to work the same, right? And I
hmm
think that's a common theme in a lot of global enterprises, no matter what part of the IT you look at. You don't
Right.
want, Apple laptops here and Microsoft there, right? You want one way, and I think for access, it's the same thing. You want things to work the same way, and that was something that we were able to deliver by standardizing. Um, and this is really where we had a really huge help from our technology partner, which is Cradlepoint,
Mm-hmm.
because those devices work everywhere,
Right.
which
Right.
is also as initially modems were kind of geared towards one country, right, which was
Right.
annoying. But now we're really in the phase where this equipment and this approach works everywhere, and what we do is standardize that. So yeah, I mean, from all these shops, they got the same connectivity, and that
Mm-hmm.
is one of our success stories.
And you bring up a good point. I think that's worth highlighting, even if it might be sort of basic. But that I assume this is really plug and play. So you have your partnership with Cradlepoint. Your deployment, so to speak, is shipping boxes out to all of these locations with
Um,
some brief instructions and turning them on. Right? Is there more to it than that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So the good thing is that the Cradlepoint platform and gives a great foundation from a technology point of view, right? So it has
Hmm.
all the hardware, software. So that's a good starting point. But what really, and this is really our job, is to really make sure that this works in every single location. So
Hmm.
because every location is different, there's different networks. So we had multiple networks to choose from, different SIM cards. So the local deployment is really the hardest part.
Right.
And yeah, especially if multiple countries, multiple languages, rollout schedules, it's all that usual stuff that really takes most of the pain.
Hmm.
But the good thing is that the technology has now come to the level where it is really working everywhere. Now we just need to make sure that we implement it in a way that it's that it works right first time, right? And that's our job. Getting on a site. It's surprising, actually, just a side thing here, because even when we rolled the business out, we thought, well, most customers probably want to get the device sent to them, right, and they plug it in
Hmm.
themselves,
Hmm.
cheap and easy. But the reality is that I think 95% of the installations we do, they want a field engineer, and
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and that is something that, again, that kind of feeds back into what enterprises they wanted: reliability and stability.
Hmm. Hmm.
That is more important than saving a few $100s and doing it yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
because like anything that you want to install in a site, it has to work for the next few years, without fail. So
Hmm.
what we do as part of our test and turn-up process is make sure that everything is properly tuned, documented, photos and everything. And that also means that in life we can support it. So every single device we track
Hmm.
and monitor, and if anything happens, we know exactly what to do and remotely can do the troubleshooting.
Right, but so you do have boots on the ground for in across a lot of these countries and can deploy folks to help this get set up.
Exactly. So there's tons of field engineers that we have engaged to actually do that and go to the site, and then together with a NOC engineer on our end. So that's always the
Hmm.
1-2 combination, where these guys
Right.
are on site, they plug in the cables, make sure everything, and then we monitor and test and turn up the service remotely.
Yeah, because I mean that is often a fear from the WAN manager perspective. IT infrastructure teams can be a bit thin, and right, so
Absolutely. And
getting
explaining it to
things
the store
deployed.
manager, you're like, well, if
Hmm.
you talk about retail stores, they don't know what to do.
Right.
So, and yeah, the trend again in IT, what we see is anything as a service, right? So you
Right.
pay one time an MRC and it just needs to work. So that's our trademark. It's worry-free connectivity.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, so an interesting use case. The retail, it's funny because that was the one that came to mind for me. That I had seen a case study on this a while ago. And any other particular case studies worth highlighting?
Yeah, so I think that's what I mentioned earlier. On the other side of the spectrum, we do a lot in energy. So wind farms, we have
Hmm.
quite a few of those. But also we're now taking it further into the next level, which is maritime. So
Mm-hmm.
again, satellite is of course the default on
Right.
any chips, right? But they're adding LTE, 5G, to make sure that they have an extra access option once they're close to shore.
Hmm.
So SD-WAN is now also making their way into ships, and
Interesting.
that's a very
Yeah.
interesting thing. Yeah, which is again, it's a new dimension,
Hmm.
and again, giving that flexibility, and it's ideal for SD-WAN because then you can say, hey, what's my options available?
Right. What's the
Well,
better connection right
what's
now,
the
and that
better
sort of thing.
connection? And if you're,
Right.
import, LTE is the better and
Hmm.
cheaper connection. So,
Hmm.
that's usually what we've learned from. So we're doing one large deployment for a Dutch global shipping company. Is that 80% of their traffic is actually when they're close to shore, because
Right.
that's when
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
everybody's downloading their new movies. They're all
Yeah. Exactly.
updating their,
Yeah.
their 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 shipping papers, and
Hmm.
that's really when there's a flurry of activity.
Right.
So then having a high speed internet connection is very valuable.
Hmm. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Excellent. So, we've been talking about your start from 7 years ago that was focused on 3G, and we move into LTE with some bigger bandwidths. 5G has been on everyone's mind for the last few years.
Hmm.
We're just now seeing kind of the commercial deployments for mobile providers. We know that 5G provides larger bandwidths. There's some different in tower density. But I wonder if you could help us work through some of the other sort of technological aspects of 5G beyond just this is a sort of higher bandwidth throughput potential.
Yep.
Are there other potential benefits of 5G? I've heard a little bit about things like network slicing and whatnot. I'm not a wireless guy, so is there
Hmm.
anything you can sort of enlighten us on there?
I mean, 5G as a technology is it's a huge iceberg, right? What you see, and then there's the old what you see in terms of
Yeah.
towers, etc. But what also is the whole backend for telcos, right? So for
Hmm.
telcos, yeah, it offers a huge benefit in terms of slicing, which means just cramming more stuff into the same network, right?
Hmm.
Being able to provision much faster and cheaper and easier than with the current systems, but. Um, I think, of course, there is a lot of interest or attention, right, in the media about 5G, super fast, and
Hmm.
flying cars and all that stuff. But
Yeah, yeah,
the reality is, again, for our space where we're in, which is the enterprise space, it's really about, well, I just need reliable, affordable
fixed connectivity.
connectivity.
Right.
Exactly. And
Exactly. Yeah.
this is also where 5G delivers perfectly because that's the first thing. It's not very
Hmm.
exciting, but it does the
Right.
job. And
Yeah.
um,
It's
uh,
exciting if you have trouble getting, internet connectivity to that site right now, right? So, yeah, it can be
well,
exciting, right? So, yeah,
we do implement
yeah,
a lot of 5G now, and we, of course, there's a
yeah.
huge differences between countries.
Hmm.
Interestingly, I mean, Asia is ahead of the curve, right? So, yeah, in Singapore and other places, we've done a lot
Right.
already. Um, and but yeah, what I mentioned before, it's not just the speed.
Hmm.
100 meg is enough for a retailer, or what else are you going to do? It's
Right.
really the reliability, and I think also the awareness now that at the CIO level that really 5G now it's really WAN proof, right? It's enterprise proof. At 3, it
Mm-hmm.
definitely wasn't. 4,
Right.
in some use cases, but 5, this is definitely at the level that you can run your business on this.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think the acceptance among CIOs is very very high. Um, but yeah, the first applications might not be that sexy. It is just
Hmm. Hmm.
branch connectivity.
Right. Right. Absolutely. But you do raise an important point too there in the background, which is that when an enterprise is going about selecting and deploying SD-WAN, you should probably make sure you're finding a solution that can utilize 5G as a transport technology. That's not universal, believe it or not. So that is, I think, an important consideration that even if you're not there yet, now you want to think about future proofing that.
Absolutely. And yeah, with the most deployments, we always have the conversation with customers like, you want to deploy this once, unless but even if you're a retailer, right? You want to,
Hmm.
just select technology what you can take along, bring along. You change sites, you have an event, you have the certain things, pop up stores. Choose a device and choose a technology that you can use for the years to come. So
Hmm.
most of the devices are basically 5G LTE, right? Which and whether you use 5G or LTE at a certain location doesn't really matter. But yeah, this is a technology which is definitely future proof for the next 3 to 5 years. that's what we're what we're trying to recommend to our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned that deployments have been a little bit ahead of the curve in Asia. Are you starting to see deployments in other developed markets pick up? And I'll give you the caveat that,
Mm.
at TeleGeography, we track, well, there's sort of, kind of two major sides of TeleGeography. One's focused on the sort of consumer market. I'm over on the side, obviously, that's focused on the B2B market in general, the wholesale, retail enterprise kind of stuff. We've seen a lot of 5G deployments in the consumer market. We're kind of waiting on fixed wireless plans. Something that works like an ISP kind of business broadband plan.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
Yep.
starting to see those emerge and develop? We've seen a little bit of increase in them, but it still seems a relatively small part of the market.
It is still slow, and
Hmm.
so a truly local fixed wireless offering, it's still very spotty.
Hmm.
So what we do, basically, we create our own. So yes, our offering to our
Right.
customers is unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
It's fixed pricing, right? So this is another
Right.
important differentiation from the mobile and from the IoT offerings out there. When we deploy fixed wireless, it's fixed speed, fixed pricing. So you say, hey, here's your 50 meg connection, and you're paying 500 a month. That's it. And that's why it's so comparable with the other fixed options that are out there.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, but we've seen that before in the market, right? We're always kind of waiting for telcos to see what they build and what they come up with. And for us as a service provider is to kind of pick and choose the best options for our customers,
Hmm. Hmm.
and leave to us, to select what is the best one for your particular requirements. And I think, I mean, that's as an end customer is the ideal situation where you can say, look, I
Hmm.
need this for my business. You guys figure out which has the right frequency and right SIM
Right.
cards. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to I would just want to make sure my branch has a good connection. So that's what we do on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's a, like, I kind of mentioned this before, but it's a tough market, wireless, because in the let's say you're looking at DIA. Well, you can get DIA from a provider that operates in a dozen or 75 or 100 countries, right?
Mhm.
Whereas with wireless, you really do have to engage almost always with a local market, because of, like I said, licensing and spectrum and all that. Do you see sort of a sufficient amount of competition out there in wireless, or are there changes you would like to see that and at regulatory or whatever levels, as someone who is the master of kind of sourcing wireless around the world?
No, we're ahead of the game at the moment, so we have
Hmm.
a nice lead in terms of this field. I mean, we're the only ones who do it in this particular way in delivering wireless
Hmm.
access in a consistent manner around the world.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't think licensing or those type of things are the issues, because at the end of the day, of course, it's still the telcos who build the networks, right? It is,
Right.
our job is to make it work as a service provider, to make it work for our customers, and picking and choosing. We have over 100 different telco contracts to choose from,
Hmm.
and from there
Hmm.
on, so that means that an end customer doesn't have to worry about which telco in which location. It is
Right.
already in our portfolio. So um, but it is a specialty. It's again, that's what it's different from fixed. It is different from mobile. It is,
Hmm.
and it is still small, but wireless access, fixed wireless access, is now starting to become its own category. And in that
Right.
category, Blue Wireless is, one of the first ones to now take this global.
Yeah, I'm sure that you would be one who probably agrees with my assessment at the beginning that we're definitely going to see a lot of growth in fixed wireless as a percentage of enterprise sites out there. So we'll let you know how that keeps developing as we track it over the several coming years here. So
We're ready.
Yeah, yeah, excellent. Yes, absolutely. Great. Well, this has been really interesting. A sort of review of this, and again, it's a major pain point I know for so many enterprises where getting wireline service as a diverse option has really been difficult as they've been switching to local internet breakouts. So I
Hmm.
think one that folks can hopefully put to good use from this conversation here. So to wrap things up, any parting thoughts or ideas of kind of how you see this market developing over the next few years?
No, it's exciting. As I mentioned earlier, I've been in local access probably all my life,
Hmm.
selling
Hmm.
previously MPLS and then internet broadband and now wireless. And
Right.
it's just this is something that if you're a large corporate, you got lots of access requirements, you should be outsourcing, right? And I think 80%
Hmm.
of the market does that.
Right.
And wireless connectivity gives you that extra option, right? It's not for everyone yet. And
Hmm.
and there's definitely early adapters, as we said, right? The customers that want
Right.
flexibility, it's ideal, and customers that that have difficult locations. Those are the ones who are definitely now switching to wireless.
Hmm.
Um,
But
and I'm
I mean,
sure.
I could see the potential that this becomes a kind of standard
Oh yeah.
option, at least as a secondary, tertiary kind of connection for a wide variety of verticals. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, for the big enabler is SD-WAN, right? So you need to
Hmm.
go to an
Exactly.
SD-WAN environment. So we
Right.
do still see a lot of customers that have MPLS and they got fix this and static IP and it gets pretty complicated. But
Hmm.
if you're moving to an SD-WAN environment, then wireless access should be one of your access options. You cannot
Right.
go without that anymore. It should
Hmm.
be right there from the start.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said at the top, we're watching this trend. MPLS isn't going away anytime soon, but it is definitely diminishing as the center of the WAN internet has been rising, and so I think as these fixed wireless plans become increasingly available from the providers and from folks like you, I
Hmm.
really think that we're going to see this increase rapidly over the next few years. So yeah.
Yep. So exciting times ahead, and anything branch, we call it branch and beyond. So a branch,
Hmm.
anything smaller or anything that doesn't have a postal code, we can
Right.
definitely have a help out.
Excellent. All right. Well, Yvonne, it was great talking to you. Before I let you go, how can folks get in touch with you and Blue Wireless if they want to?
Yes. So easiest one is our website, bluewireless.com.
Hmm.
Um, and or mail myself, Ivan at bluewireless.com, and happy to connect you with the right people around the world to see how we can help.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks very much. I'm glad I could connect with you while you were in Europe for a bit rather than your usual home base of Singapore. That makes it a little bit easier for both of us. So, yeah.
No problem. Happy to do it. Thanks for this.
Thanks for listening. The WAN Manager podcast comes from the team at TeleGeography. It's edited and produced by Jane Miller, and it's hosted by me, Greg Bryan. I also wrote the theme song that you're listening to right now. To learn more about our data, jump over to telegeography.com. Or if you want to get right into more WAN content like you hear on the show, you can visit TeleGeography's WAN forum at wanforum.com. We've got all of our podcast episodes over there, WAN Manager Survey data, and extra analysis pieces. That's all for now. So until next time, WAN enthusiasts.